GoForThe2.com in with the Week 4 predictions. Before I get into the predictions, this coming Saturday, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., College Football Today, live from the FanDuel Sportsbook at the Meadowlands. Stream it live on Xumo TV, channel 719, or get on the grid, sportsgrid.com. You could stream it 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. I'll give you my best bets on this video, along with some of the under-radar games as the weeks progress. Some games I have my eye on. I'll give you analysis. We'll go through all the top 25 games, break it down for you. This coming Saturday, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., so check us out. This coming Friday starts the selections. It's Utah on the road against USC. Utah playing very well, 3-0, led by their quarterback, Tyler Huntley, that has completed over 60% of his passes, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. This is a Utah team that got the victory in Salt Lake City last year, 42-27. They fell behind 14-0 and then ran away in the second half with Zach Moss and the physicality of the offensive line. When you look at this matchup as a whole, USC has won the last 3 meetings in the Coliseum by an average margin of victory of 11.6 points per game. 2 years ago, USC did pick up a close win, 28-27, when Winningham and the crew decided to go for 2 on a late fourth quarter touchdown. This is a USC team that I thought played very well on the road, even though they lost that matchup in BYU in Provo, 30-27. This is an offense led by Keaton Slovis that's averaging 153 rushing yards per game. More importantly, they're passing for 310 through the air with Slovis, who's played very well in the system. He's completed over 60% of his passes, 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. This is a Utah defense holding opposing offenses to under 100 rushing yards per game and giving up in the area of about 190 through the air to opposing quarterbacks. Utah has not won a game in USC since 1916. They haven't played each and every year, but the last win by the Utes in the Coliseum came in 1916, so keep that in mind when you break down this game. There's a lot of pressure on Utah to break through in this matchup. I think the short week benefits USC from getting back off a loss. I think they start fast. The wide receivers, to me, are the difference for USC. Brown, Tyler Vaughns, and Pittman can challenge that Utah defense over the top, force Huntley to match them score for score, and I look for USC to put on the pressure the same way they did against Stanford at home. In the end, the Trojans do strike the mild upset, 10 points, 31-21 over the Utes this coming Friday night. Another big battle takes place within the SEC. It's Auburn on the road. They're 3-0, taking on Texas A&M. That's 2-1. Auburn has won 3 of the last 4 by an average margin of victory of 10.3 points per game. Picked up this victory last year as a 3.5 to 4.5 point favorite. It varied. Earlier in the week last year, it was 4.5. By game time, it was anywhere from 4 to 3.5. Jarrett Stidham had to pull that victory out. He had a monumental fourth quarter, threw for over 250 yards to lead Auburn to the 4-point win at home. This was a defense in Auburn that was challenged by Travion Williams and Kellen Mond in the short to intermediate screen game, and I think that's the matchup you'll see play out in College Station this coming Saturday. When you look at Texas A&M, Kellen Mond's completed 64% of his passes, over 700 yards, 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. When you look at Isaiah Spiller, he's playing very well, averaging 8.2 yards per carry, and it can be utilized in the short to intermediate passing game. This is a Texas A&M defense that is holding opposing offenses to 83 rushing yards per game and only giving up 193 through the air, and I think that's the matchup as well. This is a Texas A&M defense that held Clemson in check. They only allowed 121 rushing yards in that loss to Death Valley and held Clemson to 3.6 yards per carry. They're going up against a run-heavy offense in Auburn that's averaging 281 yards per game and only passing for 180 yards through the air with Bo Nix. Bo Nix completing 52% of his passes, but he will be making his first career road SEC start in front of 110,000 fans. He got the victory week 1 on a neutral field against Oregon, but this is a different animal on the road in Kyle Field this coming Saturday. Couple of statistics by Gus Malzahn and Auburn. Gus Malzahn, since 2014 against AP ranked competition, is just 7-13 overall. That's a 350 winning percentage. More importantly, Auburn, since 2014, on the road or on a neutral field site, they're just 15-16 overall. And you're talking about an Auburn team that dropped 5 SEC games last year by an average margin of defeat of 13.8 points per game. I think the better quarterback is Kellen Mond. I think the better head coach is Jimbo Fisher. Look for him to have a big game plan in place, and the Aggies run away with this one. 14 points or more. They get the victory over undefeated Auburn this coming Saturday. Another under-the-radar game is Western Michigan on the road against Syracuse. Syracuse, disappointing loss to Maryland 2 weeks ago. Disappointing home loss to Clemson. They were in that battle before they lost that ball game by 32 points in that matchup. They were in it for much of the way, trailed 17-6, but in the end, Trevor Lawrence and that offense were able to challenge that defense over the top. When you look at Western Michigan, this team lost to Syracuse last year 55-42 as a 6.5 point underdog last year at home. Eric Dungey, in my opinion, was the difference in that ball game. He was knocked out in the second half, had to come off the bench and lead the comeback. He made plays with his legs. He put pressure on that defense on the perimeter, and this is a different offense led by Tommy DeVito. This is an offense in Syracuse that is one-dimensional, averaging only 93 rushing yards per game, and more importantly, the defensive front seven is giving up 190 rushing yards on the ground. When you look at Wasnick and that offense, this is a Western Michigan offense averaging 299 passing yards per game, rushing for over 200 with Bellamy, their running back. He reminds me of Willis McGahee, averaging 6 yards per carry. He has 2 rushing touchdowns. He could be utilized in the screen game. I don't think a lot of fans are going to show up after the sellout loss to Clemson. This is an under-the-radar MAC team. They have the speed to challenge Syracuse's defense over the top, and I think Western Michigan gets the upset 42-35 over Syracuse this coming Saturday. Big 12 battle, Texas and Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, since 2015, is 4-0 over Texas and have won those games by an average margin of victory of 6.7 points per game. They got this victory last year, 38-35. 3 of the 4 games have been decided by a total of 3 points. When you look at Texas, they're hitting on all cylinders, averaging 153 rushing yards per game, passing for over 250 with Ellinger. Ellinger's playing very well, completing 70% of his passes, 11 touchdowns, no interceptions. This is a Longhorn defense only giving up 83 rushing yards per game, but they're going up against a very explosive offense in Mike Gundy's crew, led by Spencer Sanders, their quarterback. He has a big play running back in Chuba Hubbard, also has 2 big play wide receivers in Tylan Wallace and Dylan Stoner. This is an Oklahoma State offense averaging over 200 rushing yards per game. They're also averaging over 280 passing yards against opposing offenses, and more importantly, the weakness of Texas is in the secondary, giving up 330 passing yards per game. I think that's the matchup. I think Oklahoma State has the slightly better secondary heading into this ball game. They strike the upset this coming weekend, 48-41 over the Longhorns. Oklahoma State moves to 4-0 on the year. Another under-the-radar game, I have 2 of them. One of them is Virginia at home against Old Dominion. Virginia coming off a monumental win over Florida State. Heading into that ball game, Florida State had won in the series 15 out of the last 19 games. They were 15-3-1 heading into Charlottesville. Virginia was laying 7 by game time. They pushed in the ball game. I marked it as a loss last week. When I made the video, they were 7.5 point favorites. They're coming off a monumental win led by their quarterback, Bryce Perkins. He's completed 66% of his passes. He led the fourth quarter comeback, and Virginia needed a fourth quarter goal line, basically a goal line stand against Blackman and Cam Akers to get that victory. They now face an Old Dominion team that's That's a methodical offense. They're averaging 20 points per game. They're rushing for in the area of about 120 yards per game, passing for in the area of about 180 yards per game. So only averaging about 320 yards of total offense. This is a defense that's holding opposing offenses to 26 total points per game. I think they're able to force a low-scoring game. Virginia coming off the monumental win. They now have Old Dominion, but more importantly, they have Notre Dame on deck the following week. I think that could be the matchup to see play out. Virginia wins, but Old Dominion keeps it close. 30-10, Virginia gets the victory over Old Dominion in this ballgame. Another under-the-radar game is UCF on the road against Pittsburgh. They got this victory last year, 45-17, as a 14.5, 15-point underdog. They dominated Stanford last week. They got their first win over a Pac-12 team. They dominated that matchup 45-27. They now go on the road to a team that they dominated. But guess what? The last time UCF played back-to-back Power 5 games came under Scott Frost in 2016. They played Michigan, they played Maryland in back-to-back weeks. They lost both of those matchups. That's been the knock on UCF. It's not that they can beat a Power 5 team. Can they do it in back-to-back weeks? When you look at Gabriel, the quarterback, he's playing lights out, completing over 60% of his passes, 9 touchdowns, no interceptions. You're talking about a Pitt team that pushed Penn State to the limit last week. They lost that matchup. 17-10, had an opportunity to punch it in, and Narduzzi elected for the field goal. He missed it. But this is a team in Pittsburgh that's 1-2 overall, but has played very well in terms of the competition. They played Virginia week 1, lost, played a very tough MAC team in Ohio, and faced Penn State and pushed them to the limit. When you look at Kenny Pickett, he threw for 372 yards last week, and when I break down the defense for Pittsburgh, there's a couple of factors that I like in this ballgame. One is their rush defense, giving up 110 rushing yards per game. They're only giving up 193 passing yards per game and holding opposing offenses to right in the area of about 28% on third downs. I like that recipe going up against a speedy offense coming off a monumental win. I'm calling for the upset. Narduzzi and Pittsburgh strikes the upset over UCF. I think they run the football, keep Gabriel and that high-octane offense on the sidelines. Pitt gets the outright win in Heinz Field this coming Saturday. Another under-the-radar game, LSU and Joe Burrow face Vanderbilt in Nashville. It's a 12 o'clock kick. Vandy's coming off a week extra in terms of preparation. Keep an eye out for that. When you look at Joe Burrow and the crew in this ballgame, this is an offense that's just hitting on all cylinders. They're running the football for over 150 yards per game. They're pounding opposing defenses in terms of their passing attack, throwing for over 230 yards per game. Burrow's completing 83% of his passes, 1,122 yards, 11 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. This is a team that is stretching defenses vertically each and every week. Now they have to go on the road to face Vandy. The last time they were there, they got the victory 27-3 in 2010. Vanderbilt hasn't been able to step up against SEC opponents, but it's an early kick. I think Riley Neal, Deuce Wallace can make enough plays to keep this game close. In the end, the better team, the better defense is LSU. LSU allowing only 83 rushing yards per game. They have a solid front seven. Look for them to run the football. They get a methodical win over Vanderbilt this coming weekend. I think LSU picks up a 31-14 win over the Commodores this coming Saturday. If you want all the selections, stay with me each and every Saturday. I'll be with you all season long. Check us out, College Football Today.